Welcome everyone to tonight's student information evening for the Centre of Innate Immunity and Infectious Diseases, fondly called CIIID. So this is a Zoom webinar, so we're going to run through the whole presentation and introduce the different panelists who will be presenting the information tonight. You're welcome to write questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and we have people who will be answering questions in the chat as we go, as well as a Q&A session at the end where we can answer a few questions out loud. You're welcome to attend multiple sessions for the other centres at Hudson, but they're going to be in separate Zoom calls, so I'll provide the link for the next Zoom session at the end of this one. And I think that's all the housekeeping I need to do, so I'm going to hand over to Paul, who's our centre head. Yeah, sorry, there is Paul's our centre head. This is me, I'm Nicole Campbell. I'm a postdoc at the Hudson Institute in CIIID. I'll be emceeing. Sam Forster is another research group head at CIIID who will be explaining the different research projects that are available in the centre. And Alice West is our PhD student representative for CIIID. Yeah, so I'll hand over to Paul now. Oh, and Kate and Gemma will be here answering questions, sorry.
You can see we all rehearse our slide presentations really well and make sure we're very coordinated. Hi, I'm Paul Herzog, I'm Centre Head. Tell you a little bit about our centre and what the possibilities are across the few presenters that are listed here. This is a photo of some or most of the centre lined up after one of our weekly meetings. You can see there's a great diversity of people of all sorts there, which we pride ourselves on and gives us a rich culture. So I'll just go through some general principles. Next slide. Doing that as to what you can expect to get from training at CIIID. We focus, as the name sounds, on innate immunity, so that first line of defense against pathogens and any other sense of danger, really, I guess. And the training you'll get in this is really rigorous. We expect high standards, but we don't expect you to be able to running into a hot start or particularly well trained, particularly these days in COVID time. So you'll be closely supervised and taught really from the basics, so there's no point in worrying about that. There's opportunities to research a lot of different diseases and how the innate immune system impacts on that. I think it's very timely for innate immunity. It's a great time to be studying this as we're discovering a lot of new ways that it operates. We have a global experiment essentially in the pandemic to work on, which some of us are doing. And really, it's a well-resourced centre. We have good grant income won by the various lab heads that we've got here, and that ensures that we're well-resourced. And really, within the centre and across the precinct and the broader Monash precinct, I think we can pretty much do anything you want in terms of how you approach the different questions. Next slide, thanks. Oh yeah, they're all labelled what else do you get from research training at the centre. Particularly post-grad students, we expect to publish, and that's something we look to by the time you get out of a PhD. The shorter courses, honours and so forth, you may, if the project goes well, contribute to publications, but there's certainly the opportunity to do that. You'll sort of mix in and learn by osmosis, if not directly, of 120 or so people are now in the centre, spread across 13 different research groups who are interested in innate immunity from a whole variety of different aspects. There are 28 postdocs. There's a good cohort in numbers there of students, which means you've got sort of peers that who can support you and sort of complain or praise each other as to how it's all going. And there are opportunities also to attend scientific meetings, whether they be local ones. If you're a PhD student, you should get to go to an international one during the course of your time here. And, you know, we make sure that you're well mentored in all aspects of science and the activities around it that you need. Next one, thanks. The research training will give you a qualification that demonstrates you're highly skilled in biomedical research. And I guess some of you will want to do an honours and leave it there and go out into the workforce. And I think an honours degree is, you know, incredibly useful, because on top of your basic degrees, it gives you that ability to learn what scientific method is and how to approach research. And I think the principles you learn are very broadly applicable. You know, you learn critical thinking and also communication skills. We have a number of research platforms like DNA sequencing, genomics, imaging, bioinformatics that you have the opportunity to get trained in. And, you know, you work in an environment where really people are genuinely trying to make an improvement to the quality of life of people and their health. Next slide, thanks. Yeah, so, you know, I think it's a good centre with a lot of good people. We have a good mix of people at different levels, so it makes for a welcoming environment, but a very professional one. And listed here are probably the main disciplines we cover. So really, no matter what background you come from, you'll find in all the groups in the centre, it's very multidisciplinary how we approach things. And, you know, the work here in the projects, as you probably see in the booklets, are suitable for people, whether you come from immunology, biochem, micro, or other sort of backgrounds. And, you know, we interact with engineers and other sort of disciplines as well. So we should have said at the start, I'm happy to take questions if anyone wants to ask them right now, but I think my presentation was probably general, but feel free, please, to stop anyone and ask a question if you want during the course of it, or otherwise there'll be a Q&A section at the end. I'll hand back to our chair, who's Nicole.
Okay, thanks, Paul, for that general introduction to the centre. So now we have Sam Forster, who's a representative supervisor from CIIID, who's going to give an overview of the different lab heads at CIIID and the sort of research they do. So Sam, you can take it away.
Thanks, Nicole. And hi, everyone. I'm Sam Forster, as you just heard, and I lead the microbiota and systems biology group within the centre, but there's a huge array of expertise within the centre, and that's one of the key advantages. We've got everything from infections to inflammation to cancer, gastrointestinal diseases, women's health, respiratory diseases. And in each of those areas, there's just a huge amount of expertise, a huge amount of knowledge, and a huge opportunity from a student perspective, from a PhD perspective, from a postdoc perspective, from a learning perspective. And that's the key benefit you have from being in a place like CIIID, the diversity of skills, the diversity of expertise. So as you've heard already, there's 13 groups spread across these main areas, and hopefully you've had a chance already, or you will by the end of this this session, to have had a look through the booklet of student projects and all the diversity that's offered. I'm not going to go through all the detail there, but to give you a basic overview of the types of areas people are focused on. Sorry, next slide, please, Nicole. You can see in the infection space, for example, people like Paul Herzog, who you've just heard from, and I believe Kate's on the call, and Wilson is also on the call today, who you can ask specific questions of. But infections of all sorts of body sites. So there's a lot of work going on in the COVID space, obviously very relevant at the moment, bacterial infections, and all sorts of specific disease models across multiple body sites. So obviously in this context, it can lead to significant inflammation. So if we go to the next slide, please, Nicole, you can see everybody works on inflammation. And this can be from an innate immune perspective in that early stages of inflammation, right through to more specific types of inflammation in certain circumstances. And then we can move into, even from that inflammation, we can move into specific diseases. So cancer, surprisingly perhaps, is very closely associated with immune responses. And there's multiple groups, from Paul to Brendan, Richard, Michael and Tony, who all have specific areas where they work on this interface between the inflammatory response and the cancer and how these the immune system may modulate or be used as a target for treatment of cancers. And so if you're interested in this space, there's huge opportunities, and there's just the expertise around here to really unlock those understandings. In addition to that, gastrointestinal disease is a major area of focus for many of the labs, both in terms of infection, cancer, and the microbiome in my own case. So if you have specific interests in these types of diseases, certainly come and talk to us or send us emails. There's opportunities there. Equally, women's health. So Paul has a very large research program in this space and the interaction with interferons in cancer. And lastly, respiratory diseases. So Phil Barden there is a clinician, and then Michelle and Liz and Ash and Kate all have specific projects that focus right from the basic understandings of the interactions right through to the clinical applications. So as you can probably see from that really rapid overview of the centre, there's a huge amount of expertise. If you have specific interests, certainly approach the relevant people that you can see from this slide. And more importantly, look at how these projects could be targeted to look at particular areas that you're focused on, whether that be molecular biology, bioinformatics, protein chemistry, or microbiology or immunology. There's a huge diverse array of options, and it's really just about coming and talking to people, looking through the project handbook, which hopefully there's a link to on the next slide, that you'll be able to identify the key projects that you're interested in, and then by all means send us an email, ask questions through the chat right now, and we can give you more information about the potential projects and the opportunities that exist here. Again, I'm happy to take questions now, or we can move on back to Nicole.
Great, thanks, Sam. So yeah, if you have any questions for Sam or Paul or any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll answer them as we go and as well at the end. So now I'm going to hand over to Alice. Alice is a PhD student in CIIID in Brendan Jenkins' lab, who Sam just introduced. She's going to speak to her experience as a student and also tips for contacting supervisors and just thinking about projects you might be interested in.
Thanks, Nicole. Next slide, please. So what's it like as a student in CIIID? I came in starting a PhD in mid-2019. I actually came from Melbourne Uni, so I haven't actually been at Monash either. But I found that immediately everyone was incredibly welcoming and supporting of the fact that I was a bit unsure of how things were done at Monash and also at Hudson. But everyone wanted to help me out and make sure that I knew the best way to get into the program and get going in the lab and making sure that I had all my inductions and what have you correctly done. And I think that the environment with the students in CIIID, we all are really approachable. We're incredibly friendly. I feel like I've definitely made lifelong friends within this group that I see outside of the lab as well on the weekend or what have you. And I think that extends just between, more so even between honours and PhD. There's no distinguishing between those sort of cohorts. And I think it's really amazing seeing the honours students also helping each other out with assignments and what have you as well. So we all help each other out where possible. And I want to extend that further to say that everyone within CIIID, we all have different specialty sort of areas that we look into, and we have different expertises in sort of different experiments as well. And coming in with my own set of knowledge, I had some questions on techniques and what have you about that I needed to do in my PhD, and I found that supervisors and lab heads and other postdocs and research assistants, everyone wanted to help me out because we all want to see each other succeed, I think, at the end of the day in our experiments and get the most out of what we're doing here. And I think that's amazing. And that's not just from within my lab group, that's as a whole for CIIID. Also, there are a lot of mentoring programs that the Hudson generally offers, which I thought I'd just quickly touch on. And that's not just between our academics, so postdocs and PhDs. It's also within PhDs who are at further stages of their journey, and honours students as well. And there's also the IMNIS program, which is matching industry leaders with PhD students to get a taste of what industry is like as well. So those are amazing mentoring programs that we do as well. And just the next slide, Nicole. And I thought I'd just quickly touch on the Hudson Institute Student Society, where I'm the centre rep for the CIIID. So essentially, I'm the go-between person for the students in CIIID and also the wider Hudson environment as well. And it's amazing to be a part of HIS and also to attend other HIS events, and it's open to both honours students, any student as well, essentially. And we get monthly catch-ups at the moment. It's mainly online. I think we're going to do a games night in a couple of weeks, which will be good fun. We've had trivia nights in the past. Dumplings nights are always a great hit. And we also have a netball team, which is great fun. Not many of us are very good at netball, but it's a great way to meet people outside of your centre. And if anyone is wanting to be a student here at Hudson, I think it would be amazing to get involved within HIS, because you get to meet people outside of your immediate centre and also tap into their expertises as well. We also have a student retreat, which is held for all students, and it's held this year. So hopefully, we'll see. I think it actually might be postponed, unfortunately. But yeah, so that's something that could be you could look forward to as well.
Thank you, Alice. So you now have a good overview of the science CIIID and the social aspects of the student. So I'm sure you're eager to apply to do your honours, PhD, or summer projects with us. So how do you go about doing that? So as Gemma has actually provided the link in the chat to our student vacation placement program, you'll also find through that page the handbook for all the different projects that are available at CIIID. So have a look through that booklet and see what the different supervisors in CIIID are doing and the projects they have available. If you find one that is interesting to you and that you would be interested in doing a project on, you should introduce yourself to that supervisor. There'll be emails beside each project for you to contact. So just send a friendly email, introduce yourself, give a bit of your background and why you're interested in that project, and see if it's available with the supervisor. Do make sure the project is a good fit for your needs and background. Make sure it's something you're going to be actually interested in, and the supervisor should get back to you pretty quickly and to let you know if the project is available, if they have space in the lab for the kind of project that you're looking to do. And if it's a good fit between you and the supervisor and the project, you can apply. So the different application processes will depend on whether you're applying for honours or masters or PhD or a summer project. So if you find a potential supervisor, they can advise you on that process. But if you have any specific administrative questions for honours, you can contact Mark Hedger at Monash, or for PhDs, you can contact either Kate Loveland or Dan Goff with questions. There are different application rounds if you're applying for scholarships that you should be aware of, but those are managed through Monash. Slides are transitioning very slowly. So this is the link again for the Student Projects Handbook. So all of the projects that are available in 2022 will be through this link on the Hudson.org website. If you go even just to the Hudson website, there's a whole drop-down menu for students, and you'll find all of the information for students there. All of the emails for supervisors are in that booklet, but you can also find them on the website as well for each different supervisor's profile. So that is all of our official content, but we do have a few minutes left for Q&A before the next session starts. So if anyone has any questions they'd like to be answered by our panelists, before we finish, please put them in the chat now and we'll do our best to answer them before the end of our time slot. While you're typing your questions, I'll remind you that the next information session is for the Centre of Reproductive Health. That starts at 6:30. So I'm going to put the link for that call in the chat now for those who are wanting to attend it after this. Did any of our other panelists have any closing remarks?
I just thought Kate hasn't said anything. Maybe Kate, do you want to introduce yourself and what you do?
Hi all. So I'm actually been at Hudson now for 3.5 years. And, you know, it's been a really rewarding environment for my lab to sort of come in and we've really sort of delve into across the board access to projects that might be related to arthritis, type 2 diabetes, through to cancer. And as the theme of the centre is, we really have such an amazing group of infectious immunologists and microbiologists. So it's sort of been, and virologists. It's an amazing place to sort of be able to do multifaceted work. So I think, yeah, I think looking at what you want to do in the future, there's a depth of knowledge here that you can sort of get really good access to sort of upskill to do a PhD in the future or go into industry. There's a lot of opportunities to sort of get those skills you might not get in a really highly specialised department. So just think about, you know, all the access you get to such great clinicians and medical researchers.
Thanks, Kate. I mean, there are often questions, as there was one in the chat there, about whether we take students and that. In general, I would just say that there are a lot of ways you can come and do training, whether it's sort of part-time, whether it's a Europe program, whether it's 3990, whether it's summer vacation. So don't hesitate to just send an email to anyone you see in the student book, and you know, I'm sure people will be keen to chat and accommodate your interests.
The other thing I'd say is there is the opportunity, like I had a Melbourne University undergraduate student come and do some summer work with me through the program that we run. And she knew she wanted to see whether she wanted to go into clinical kind of translational research following a med degree. And it sort of was a really good sort of grounding for her to really realise the sort of areas she was interested in.
Very good.
Definitely. And I think another way to reach out to people is also if you want to chat to another student, there's also the emails of students within the labs as well, if you want another student perspective as well.
Yeah, good idea, Alice.
Thanks, everyone. That's our time allotted.
The next one starts.
Next one starts right away. So the link. For
I mean, we'll still be here for a few minutes if anyone wants to stay on and ask a question, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not in
Specifically.
a rush, so feel free to continue asking questions.